Warning: this story contains descriptions of poisoning and attempted murder. All names except my own have been changed. I never thought I'd be writing this story. 2 years ago, if someone told me my best friend of 13 years would try to murder my mother over a business dispute, I would have laughed in their face. But here I am, still processing the fact that Melissa Hart, the girl who held my hair back when I was sick, who drove me to my father's funeral, who knew every secret I'd ever shared, is now serving 23 years in Georgia State Prison for attempted murder. My name is Clara Donovan, and this is the story of how friendship can become the most dangerous weapon of all. Melissa and I met during freshman orientation at Savannah Arts Academy in 2009. I was the quiet girl with sketch pads falling out of my backpack. She was the confident one who somehow convinced our English teacher to let us do our Shakespeare presentation as an interpretive dance. We were inseparable from day one. Our friendship had that intense, all-consuming quality that teenage girls perfect. We had matching friendship bracelets, a shared journal we passed back and forth, and plans to be each other's maid of honor someday. When other friendships faded after high school, ours seemed to strengthen. We'd evolved from giggling teenagers into professional women who still made time for weekly coffee dates and random Tuesday night phone calls. Melissa became a registered nurse at Memorial Health, specializing in pediatric care. I built a freelance graphic design business from my apartment in Savannah's historic district. We were living parallel lives, both single, both ambitious, both convinced we'd figured out how to balance career and friendship better than everyone else we knew. My mother, Evelyn, adored Melissa. Mom had been an elementary school teacher for 30 years before retiring, and she had that maternal instinct that drew lonely kids like magnets. Melissa's own family lived in Ohio, and my mother essentially adopted her as a second daughter. Melissa came to our house for Easter dinners, helped us decorate the Christmas tree, and called my mother Mama Evie with genuine affection. That girl has been through so much, Mom would tell me after Melissa left our house. She just needs people who believe in her. Melissa did have a complicated past. Her parents divorced messily when she was 12. She'd struggled with anxiety and depression in college. She had a pattern of intense relationships that ended badly, both romantic and platonic. I'd watched her burn bridges with roommates, co-workers, and boyfriends over perceived slights or misunderstandings. But she was never like that with me. With me, she was loyal, supportive, and genuinely caring. Or so I thought. The beginning of the end started with what should have been our greatest success story. In early 2022, we decided to combine our skills and launch a business together. Paper and Prose would create custom wedding invitations, birth announcements, and corporate stationery. I'd handle the design work. Melissa would manage the business side and client relations. We were both excited about the prospect. I had the creative vision, and Melissa had the people skills I lacked. She was naturally charming and persuasive. She could convince brides to upgrade their paper quality or add foil stamping with ease. For the first few months, everything went perfectly. We booked 12 weddings for the summer season and had a waiting list. Then the red flags started appearing. The first incident happened in March. Mrs. Patterson, a bride getting married in June, called me directly instead of going through Melissa as we'd agreed. "I'm so sorry to bother you, Clara," she said, her voice strained. "But I've been trying to reach Melissa about my deposit refund for 3 weeks. I had to cancel my wedding due to a family emergency, and she told me it would be processed within 5 business days. It's been 15. I was confused. We had a clear refund policy. 50% of the deposit was non-refundable, but the remaining 50% should have been returned immediately in cases of genuine emergency. When I checked our business account, I saw that Mrs. Patterson's full deposit was still there, untouched. When I called Melissa about it, she seemed flustered. "Oh God, I completely forgot about that," she said. "I've been so swamped at work. I'll handle it today." But 3 more days passed, and Mrs. Patterson called me again. When I checked our account, the money was gone entirely, not refunded to Mrs. Patterson, but transferred out to an account I didn't recognize. That's when I discovered Melissa had opened a secondary business account without telling me. When I confronted her, she got defensive immediately. "Clara, you handle the creative stuff, I handle the money stuff. That's how we divided the responsibilities," she snapped. "I needed better access for managing cash flow. But we agreed all major financial decisions would be made together," I said. "And Mrs. Patterson still hasn't gotten her refund. She'll get her money. You need to trust me to do my job." The second account, as it turned out, contained nearly $8,000 of client deposits. When I demanded access to see the statements, Melissa claimed there were processing delays with the bank. Then she stopped responding to my texts altogether. By April, I had 5 different clients calling me about missing refunds, delayed orders, or unexplained charges on their credit cards. Melissa had been handling all the financial communications, and it became clear she'd been telling clients one thing while doing another entirely. The breaking point came when I received a cease and desist letter from an attorney representing one of our vendors. Apparently, Melissa had ordered $2,300 worth of specialty paper from a premium supplier in Atlanta, promised payment within 30 days, then never paid the invoice. The attorney was threatening to sue both of us personally. I tried to reach Melissa for days. She wouldn't answer her phone, wouldn't respond to texts, and when I showed up at her apartment, she pretended not to be home even though I could see her car in the parking lot. Finally, I did something I'd never done in 13 years of friendship. I went to her workplace. I waited in Memorial Health's parking lot until her shift ended at 7 p.m., then confronted her as she walked to her car. "Melissa, what the hell is going on?" I demanded. "We have clients demanding refunds, vendors threatening to sue us, and you've been ignoring me for weeks." Her response shocked me. Instead of apologizing or explaining, she turned on me with a fury I'd never seen before. "You know what your problem is, Clara? You've never trusted me," she hissed. "You've been second-guessing every decision I make since day one. You want to control everything, but you don't want to do any of the hard work. That's not true, and you know it. I just want to understand where our clients' money went. The money is fine. The business is fine. You're the one creating problems where they don't exist. Then show me the account statements." "I don't have to show you anything. I'm not your employee." That conversation ended with her getting in her car and driving away while I stood in the parking lot, completely bewildered. I'd gone there expecting to solve a problem. Instead, I discovered our friendship might be beyond repair. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned the full extent of the damage. Melissa had indeed been mismanaging funds, using client deposits as personal loans and juggling payments between different orders. She told several clients their invitations were delayed due to supply chain issues when in reality, she'd never placed their orders because she'd spent their deposits. I made the hardest decision of my business career. I dissolved Paper and Prose and personally refunded every affected client using my own savings. It cost me nearly $12,000 and destroyed my credit score, but I couldn't let innocent brides and families suffer because of Melissa's poor financial management. When I called Melissa to tell her what I'd done, she exploded. "You had no right to shut down our business without consulting me," she screamed into the phone. "You sabotaged everything we built together." "I saved us from getting sued," I replied. "I saved your nursing license from being affected by a fraud investigation. You ruined my life, Clara. You'll regret this." Those words, "You'll regret this," should have been a warning. But at the time, I thought she was just angry and would eventually calm down. I thought our friendship, despite this massive setback, could eventually be repaired. I was wrong. The harassment started subtly. In May, I began noticing that some of my regular freelance clients were suddenly distant during phone calls. 2 clients cancelled ongoing projects without clear explanations. A third asked me point blank if there was anything I needed to tell him about my business practices. It didn't take long to trace the source. Melissa had been systematically contacting my professional network, spinning a version of our business dissolution that painted me as unstable and dishonest. She told people I'd stolen client money and had mental health issues that affected my reliability. She sent carefully worded emails that stopped just short of actionable defamation but were devastatingly effective at damaging my reputation. The worst part was how strategic she was about it. Melissa knew exactly who my most important clients were, which professional organizations I belonged to, and how to frame her concerns in ways that sounded like genuine worry rather than malicious gossip. "I'm just concerned about Clara," she told my biggest corporate client, according to what he eventually shared with me. "She's been under a lot of stress lately, and I've noticed some concerning behaviors. I thought you should know in case it affects her work quality." By June, my income had dropped by 40%. I was spending more time defending my reputation than actually working. When I consulted with an attorney about pursuing defamation charges, he explained that proving malicious intent would be difficult and expensive, especially since Melissa had been careful never to make explicitly false statements, just implications and concerns. I was trapped in a nightmare where my oldest friend had become my most dangerous enemy, and there was nothing I could legally do about it. My mother watched all of this unfold with increasing worry. Mom had always been my emotional support system, especially since my father died 5 years earlier. She'd listen to me vent about lost clients and offer practical advice about rebuilding my business reputation. "Melissa's hurting," Mom would say during our weekly Sunday dinners. Hurt people. She'll come to her senses eventually. "Mom, she's systematically trying to destroy my career. This isn't just hurt feelings." "I know, sweetheart. But you two loved each other like sisters for 13 years. That doesn't just disappear." Mom's faith in human nature was both her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability. She genuinely believed that anyone could be redeemed with enough patience and kindness. She'd proven it countless times as a teacher, helping troubled kids who everyone else had written off. But she'd never dealt with someone like Melissa. In July, something strange happened. I was at my mother's house helping her organize old photo albums when the doorbell rang. Mom answered it and came back with a surprised smile. "Melissa's here," she said. "She wants to talk to you." My heart started racing. Melissa and I hadn't spoken directly since our phone argument in April. I wasn't sure if I was ready for another confrontation, especially at my mother's house. "Tell her I'm not ready to talk," I said. "Clara, honey, she's crying. She says she has something important to give me." Against my better judgment, I agreed to see her. Melissa stood on the front porch holding a small gift bag, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she said, looking directly at me. "I know I've been awful. I know I've hurt you. I've been so angry, and I took it out on you when none of this was really your fault." It was the first genuine apology I'd heard from her since everything started. For a moment, I felt the old affection resurface. "I brought something for you, Mama Evie," Melissa continued, turning to my mother. "I was cleaning out my apartment and found some old photos from when we were teenagers. I thought you'd want copies." She handed Mom the gift bag, which contained an envelope of photos and a small decorative tin of loose-leaf tea. "Earl Grey with lavender," Melissa explained. "From that little shop in Charleston we visited last year. I remember you saying it was the best tea you'd ever had." My mother was visibly touched. "Oh, sweetheart, you didn't need to do this." "Yes, I did. You've been so good to me over the years. I needed you to know that even though Clara and I are having problems, I still care about you." We spent about 20 minutes on the porch, mostly in awkward small talk. Melissa seemed genuinely remorseful, and by the time she left, I was cautiously optimistic that maybe we could find a way to repair our friendship, or at least end the professional sabotage. "See?" Mom said after Melissa drove away. "I told you she'd come around." 2 days later, my mother nearly died. Sunday, July 17th, started like any other weekend. I arrived at Mom's house around 2 p.m. for our usual Sunday dinner tradition. Mom was in the kitchen, preparing her famous lemon chicken, when I noticed she'd set out the fancy china teacups. "Special occasion?" I asked. "I wanted to try that tea Melissa brought," she said, gesturing to the decorative tin sitting on the counter. "It smells wonderful." She'd already brewed a pot and was pouring 2 cups when I arrived. We sat at her kitchen table, looking through the photos Melissa had brought, sipping the Earl Grey while the chicken finished cooking. The tea was delicious, floral and smooth, with just the right amount of lavender. Mom had 2 cups, I had 1. About an hour later, while we were eating dinner, Mom suddenly pushed her plate away. "I don't feel well," she said, pressing her hand to her stomach. "I think I need to lie down." Within minutes, she was vomiting violently. Then came the dizziness, confusion, and difficulty breathing. By 6 p.m., I was racing her to Memorial Health University Medical Center, terrified that she was having a heart attack or stroke. The emergency room was chaos. Mom couldn't keep water down, her blood pressure was dangerously low, and she kept drifting in and out of consciousness. Dr. Patricia King, the attending physician, ordered immediate blood work and 4 fluids. "Has your mother eaten anything unusual today?" Dr. King asked me while nurses worked to stabilize Mom's vital signs. "Just Sunday dinner," I said. "Lemon chicken, rice, vegetables. Nothing she hasn't had 100 times before." "Any medications? Alcohol?" "She takes blood pressure medication, but nothing else. And she had some tea earlier." "What kind of tea?" Earl Grey. It was a gift from. I stopped mid-sentence as a horrible possibility occurred to me. Can you test for poisoning? Dr. King's expression grew serious. We'll run a full toxicology panel. The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. I sat in the waiting room calling my mother's siblings, updating my boyfriend Liam, and trying not to think about the worst-case scenarios. Mom was stable but still unconscious when Dr. King finally came to find me around midnight. The good news is your mother is going to recover, she said. The bad news is we found ethylene glycol in her bloodstream. What's ethylene glycol? Antifreeze. Someone poisoned your mother. The words hit me like physical blows. Poisoned. Someone had deliberately tried to kill my mother. How much? I managed to ask. Enough to be fatal if you hadn't brought her in when you did. She probably consumed it within the last 4 to 6 hours. My mind immediately went to the tea. The beautiful, thoughtful gift that Melissa had brought just 2 days earlier. I need to call the police, I said. Detective Raymond Torres arrived at the hospital within an hour. He was a soft-spoken man in his 40s who specialized in domestic violence and assault cases. He took detailed notes while I explained about my friendship with Melissa, our business dispute, and the recent visit where she'd brought the tea. We'll need to test the tea, he said. And we'll need access to your mother's house to collect evidence. You really think Melissa did this? I asked, even though part of me already knew the answer. I don't think anything yet, Detective Torres replied. But ethylene glycol doesn't accidentally end up in someone's system. This was deliberate. The crime scene investigation began the next morning. Officers collected the tea tin, the remaining loose-leaf tea, Mom's sugar jar, and anything else that might contain traces of poison. They also interviewed neighbors to establish a timeline of who had visited Mom's house recently. Mrs. Chen, who lived next door, provided crucial information. She'd seen Melissa arrive on Friday afternoon and had watched through her kitchen window as Melissa spent about 20 minutes inside the house. I thought it was nice that the girls were talking again, Mrs. Chen told Detective Torres. Clara's mother was so worried about their friendship. The lab results came back 3 days later. The sugar jar in Mom's kitchen contained high concentrations of ethylene glycol. Someone had mixed antifreeze directly into the sugar, knowing that Mom always sweetened her tea. But here's what made it truly diabolical. The loose-leaf tea itself was clean. Melissa had brought legitimate Earl Grey with lavender, exactly what she claimed. She'd hidden the poison in the sugar, knowing that anyone who drank tea at Mom's house would unknowingly consume it. If I'd drunk more than 1 cup, if Mom had offered tea to other visitors, if Mrs. Chen had stopped by for their weekly chat and been offered a cup, Melissa's revenge could have claimed multiple innocent lives. The investigation moved quickly after that. Detective Torres obtained a warrant for Melissa's phone records and discovered a text conversation with another nurse from her hospital. Melissa, July 10. Clara thinks she can ruin my life and get away with it. Coworker, you need to let this go. Focus on moving forward. Melissa, July 12. She needs to know what losing someone feels like. Coworker, Melissa, that sounds scary. What are you talking about? Melissa, July 15. Sometimes the people we love most become collateral damage. There were more messages, spanning several weeks, where Melissa detailed her growing resentment and her belief that I'd deliberately sabotaged her life. She'd convinced herself that I was the villain in our story, that I'd destroyed her financially and professionally out of jealousy and control. On July 22, Detective Torres arrested Melissa at her apartment. According to the police report, she initially denied everything, claimed she hadn't seen my mother in months, insisted she'd never bought any tea, suggested that someone else must have had access to Mom's house. But then she made a critical mistake. Besides, she told Detective Torres during questioning, if someone wanted to poison Evelyn, why would they put it in the sugar jar? That's so obvious. The problem was that the detail about the sugar jar hadn't been released to the public. Only the investigators, my family, and the person who'd placed the poison there would know that specific information. When Detective Torres pointed this out, Melissa's composure finally cracked. She destroyed my life, Melissa said, no longer denying her involvement. Clara took everything from me. My business, my reputation, my future. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to lose everything. So you decided to murder her mother. I didn't mean for it to be murder. I just wanted Evelyn to get sick so Clara would be scared and distracted. I wanted her to feel helpless. But the toxicology reports proved otherwise. The amount of ethylene glycol in Mom's system would have been fatal within hours if left untreated. Melissa hadn't been trying to scare me. She'd been trying to kill the person I loved most in the world. Melissa's trial began 8 months later, in March 2023. The media attention was intense. Local news stations ran stories about the friendship that turned deadly, and court TV reporters crowded the Chatham County Courthouse steps every morning. Prosecutor Angela Rhodes built a methodical case around 3 key elements: motive, opportunity, and evidence. She walked the jury through our friendship, the business dispute, and the systematic harassment that followed. She presented the text messages, the toxicology reports, and the timeline that placed Melissa in my mother's house just days before the poisoning. The evidence was overwhelming, but what made the case truly compelling was its emotional weight. This wasn't a random crime or a moment of passion. It was calculated betrayal that exploited the deepest bonds of trust and family. My mother testified on the 3rd day of the trial. She was physically recovered but emotionally fragile, her voice shaking as she described the afternoon she nearly died. "I trusted Melissa like my own daughter," Mom told the jury. "I welcomed her into my home, into my family. I never imagined anyone could use that trust to try to kill me." The defense attorney, Mark Allison, tried to create reasonable doubt by suggesting other possible suspects. Maybe someone else had access to Mom's house. Maybe the poisoning was connected to my father's death 5 years earlier, some delayed insurance fraud scheme. Maybe I had poisoned my own mother to frame Melissa. But the evidence against Melissa was too strong, and her recorded confession to Detective Torres was damning. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with a guilty verdict on all charges: attempted murder in the first degree, aggravated assault, and terroristic threats. At sentencing, Judge Maria Santos addressed Melissa directly. "Ms. Hart, you betrayed not just a friendship, but the fundamental trust that holds our society together. You used your knowledge of an innocent woman's habits and her love for you to try to commit murder. This court sentences you to 23 years in the Georgia Department of Corrections, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Melissa showed no emotion as the sentence was read. She didn't look at me, didn't look at my mother, didn't acknowledge the family she'd destroyed. She simply stared straight ahead, as if the whole proceeding was happening to someone else. After the trial, I thought I'd feel relief or closure. Instead, I felt empty. The justice system had worked. Melissa would spend the next 2 decades in prison, and Mom was safe. But 13 years of friendship don't disappear just because someone commits an unforgivable crime. I kept thinking about the girl who held my hand during my father's funeral. The friend who drove me to the hospital when I had appendicitis. The person who knew all my dreams and fears and had promised we'd be in each other's lives forever. Where had that person gone? When had love twisted into such consuming hatred? 2 years have passed since Melissa's sentencing. My mother has made a full physical recovery, but the emotional scars run deep. She's installed a security system, changed all her locks, and rarely opens her door to unexpected visitors. The trusting, open-hearted woman who once welcomed anyone into her home now views the world with careful suspicion. "I keep thinking about how I almost died because I was kind to the wrong person," she told me recently. "It makes me want to build walls around my heart." I've struggled with the same instinct. The betrayal cuts so deep that I find myself questioning the motives of everyone in my life. When my boyfriend Liam brings me flowers, I wonder what he wants. When new clients compliment my work, I assume they're being manipulative. When friends invite me to social events, I analyze whether they have hidden agendas. Melissa's attempted murder didn't just target my mother. It poisoned my ability to trust, to believe in the fundamental goodness of people, to form new relationships without constantly waiting for betrayal. But I'm learning that healing isn't about forgetting what happened or pretending the betrayal didn't matter. It's about choosing to remain open to love despite the risk, about building new relationships while honoring the wisdom that pain has taught me. My business has recovered and grown stronger. The clients I kept through the worst period became my biggest advocates, referring new customers and vouching for my character. My reputation, which Melissa tried so hard to destroy, emerged more solid than ever. I've started writing about the experience, first for therapy, then for a local magazine's crime column, and now for anyone who might benefit from understanding how friendship can become dangerous. The response has been overwhelming. Dozens of people have shared their own stories of betrayal by trusted friends, of relationships that turn toxic, of the difficulty of recognizing manipulation when it comes from someone you love. 6 months ago, I received a letter from Melissa in prison. I debated whether to read it, ultimately deciding that I owed it to the friendship we once shared to hear what she had to say. The letter was 3 pages long, filled with apologies and explanations. She wrote about her mental health struggles, her feelings of abandonment, her belief that I'd deliberately sabotaged her life. She claimed to understand now that her actions were inexcusable, that she'd let anger consume her judgment. But what struck me most was how the letter still centered her own pain. Even in apologizing, Melissa was asking me to understand her perspective, to see her as the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own choices. I haven't responded to the letter, and I don't plan to. Some betrayals are so complete that forgiveness becomes not just unnecessary but potentially harmful. Melissa made a choice to try to murder my mother rather than take responsibility for her own mistakes. That choice revealed something essential about who she really was, underneath all the years of friendship. The girl I thought I knew, loyal, caring, supportive, may have never existed at all. Maybe she was always capable of this level of cruelty, and I was simply too naive to see it. Or maybe she was genuinely caring once, but years of unaddressed mental health issues and poor choices gradually corrupted her into someone capable of attempted murder. I'll never know for certain, and I've made peace with that ambiguity. What I do know is that I survived. My mother survived. We rebuilt our lives, learned to trust again, and found ways to honor the experience without letting it define us completely. The lesson isn't that friendship is dangerous or that we should isolate ourselves from human connection. The lesson is that real love, healthy love, doesn't demand the destruction of other people. It doesn't justify cruelty in the name of pain. It doesn't poison the innocent to punish the guilty. Melissa will be eligible for parole when she's 52 years old. I'll be 45. My mother, if she's still alive, will be 81. We'll all be different people by then, shaped by decades of experiences that Melissa won't share. Sometimes I wonder if she'll try to contact us when she's released. Part of me hopes she'll have found genuine healing and redemption. Part of me hopes she'll understand that some relationships can't be repaired, no matter how much time passes or how sincere the apologies become. But mostly, I try not to think about Melissa at all. She took enough from my family. She doesn't get to take our future too. Instead, I focus on the relationships that did survive, the friends who supported me through the investigation and trial, the clients who trusted me despite the rumors, the mother whose strength and resilience continue to inspire me every day. Those are the people who deserve my energy, my trust, and my love. As for revenge, the justice system handled that. Melissa is exactly where she belongs, and that's enough for me. Clara Donovan is a graphic designer based in Savannah, Georgia. She writes about crime, justice, and healing for several regional publications. Her mother, Evelyn, has made a full recovery and recently returned to substitute teaching at her old elementary school.